has all led us here to this great city of Baltimore.
Ladies and gentlemen, from Baltimore, Maryland, let's get ready to rumble!
Oh, we are!
If there's anybody that's a big star in Baltimore, it's you. In Baltimore, whether you like it or not, you better learn to live with it, because I'm the best there is.
Is tonight as Championship Wrestling returns to Baltimore at the Baltimore Civic Center tonight.
And I have picked Baltimore out to be the place where this war is going to come to an end, because they got a lot of nice, fine hospitals there.
You know it, I know it, and Baltimore is.
It's the Night of Champions in Baltimore, Maryland at the Civic Center.
Hello, wrestling fans, and welcome to another episode of the RassleRama podcast. As always, before we get into things, I want to invite you to check out our website, www.RassleRama.com. Also, check us out on Facebook, facebook.com/RassleRama. We had some pretty cool postings on our Facebook page this week. In case you missed it, we had the actual program from April 30th, 1977, when superstar Billy Graham defeated Bruno Sammartino at the Baltimore Civic Center. It's still up there if you want to check it out. We do have a ton of old programs posted on our website, RassleRama.com. So again, for daily updates, check out facebook.com/RassleRama. And check out our website, RassleRama.com, for all upcoming events. We try to plug local indies, and also check out our website for tons of classic old programs. I'm looking at one now. It's September 23rd, 1952, believe it or not, at the Baltimore Coliseum. It was main evented by Lou Thez. So again, RassleRama.com. Check it out when you get a chance. This week, we're going to be talking about one of the coolest weeks in wrestling that I ever experienced. Smoky Mountain Fanweek 1993. Hard to believe it was 26 summers ago. I was getting on a bus down to Morristown, Tennessee. Before we get on the time machine and go back to SMW 1993, let's jump into some current news. Raw and SmackDown ratings are continuing to plummet. This past week, they got the lowest non-holiday numbers in history. These were lower than shows on Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve. The viewership actually dropped 30% for Raw compared to the same time last year. SmackDown dropped 20% during that same time frame. Unbelievable that the ratings keep dropping, and WWE is just continuing to put out the same old stuff. Hopefully, with AEW right around the corner, this will give WWE a kick in the ass that I think they desperately need. In case you missed it, Dean Ambrose released a Jon Moxley video. Moxley, of course, was his former persona on the Indies. Word is he will be announcing some upcoming indie dates in June real soon. Revival turned down contracts worth $500,000 per year each. The Revival were offered contracts for $500,000 per year each. I'm not laughing at the number because it's the Revival, because I'm a huge fan of the Revival. But that just shows how desperate WWE is to keep talent. The Revival turned those contracts down, and then WWE immediately had them do that horrible manscaping segment on Monday Night Raw. Bobby Roode, where was he out on Raw this week? He beat Ricochet last week. He's not on Raw this week, and Ricochet is awarded a spot in Money in the Bank. Again, I'm a fan of Ricochet, so this by no means is me crapping on Ricochet, but how does Bobby Roode beat him one week? Roode's not on TV the week after, and Ricochet is given a spot in Money in the Bank. Let's switch over to Impact. They're doing 2 shows this weekend in Philadelphia at the ECW Arena. Impact, for those who haven't been watching, don't sleep on it. They're putting out a really, really good product. I definitely suggest checking them out on Twitch, pulling them up on YouTube. You're missing out if you're not checking out Impact. Rich Swann signed a new 2-year deal to stay with Impact, so that's good. I remember Swanee back in the EWA days. We used him, Christ, that was probably 9-10 years ago when we used him on EWA here in Maryland. So it's good to see him sticking around, being on TV. Hopefully he'll get another shot with WWE. If not, he's doing some great work in Impact. Let's go to some upcoming indie shows. Speaking of EWA, they're having their Legends show May 18th in Parkville. I'll be there to kind of check out some of the guys I used to deal with there. Again, support your indies. Rich Swann was on EWA. What are we in? 2019. We used them 2009, 2010. NXT is in Bel Air also on May 18th. Adam Cole will be on that show. We were using Adam Cole on EWA in 2008, 2009. I'm pretty sure the first title he ever held was the EWA Cruiserweight title. Get out and support your indies. The guys you're seeing today are going to be on TV in the next 5 to 10 years. AEW Double or Nothing is May 25th. The StarCast special events will be all that weekend. We will be checking out some of those events on Fight TV. We'll probably be doing a weekend wrap-up, maybe Memorial Day night, of the AEW Double or Nothing and StarCast weekend. Should be a great, great weekend for wrestling fans. Following weekend, MCW Slamboree, June 1st in Joppa. This will be a benefit for the Bruiser. MCW, speaking of local legends, this guy is an MCW legend. So if you can, get out, get to the show, support the guy. He's going through some health issues right now. All the money will go towards him with his medical cost. That show will feature New Japan Pro Tag Team Champions, the Gorillas of Destiny. You're going to get to see the New Japan Tag Team Champions in Joppa, Maryland on an indie show. Get there, guys. Bruiser is a great guy. I remember when I started booking EWA, probably 2005 or 2006. He came over and offered his services to help help the company out, get him some name recognition. We did a great feud between him and DJ High, just two big dudes beating the hell out of each other. I actually probably first encountered Bruiser maybe 5 years prior to that, early 2000s, when I was with MCW. Bruiser was a long time caller of my hotline, and apparently he had won a videotape on one of the hotline contests, and I guess the videotape got lost in the mail. He never got the tape. So I show up to MCW. I was going to, what was I doing? I was either doing commentary, or I may have been doing backstage interviews. I can't remember what I was doing. But I show up to a show. It wasn't in Maryland. I want to say it was like in Delaware or Ocean City maybe. Anyway, I get to the show, and this big-ass dude, Bruiser, comes over to me saying, "Hey, you owe me a videotape." And a good dude. Get out to MCW Slamboree June 1st in Joppa. Again, all proceeds go to benefit the Bruiser and his medical cost. That same night in Atlantic City, June 1st, Game Changer Wrestling presents their Tournament of Survival. This is their deathmatch tournament. I'd initially wanted to go to the Tournament of Survival. That was in the plans. But then when MCW announced this benefit for the Bruiser, I knew I had to be there. But for those of you close to Atlantic City, if you're in a deathmatch wrestling, you got to get to the GCW Tournament of Survival, June 1st, Atlantic City. Some big GCW news. They just announced they will be part of the Warped Tour in Atlantic City on June 29th and 30th. I believe they're doing 2 shows both days. So that's huge. Game Changer Wrestling doing shows in front of the Warped Tour audience. Good luck to those guys. They also announced they'll be holding shows in Japan at the end of August. This is an indie group, guys. They're doing big things. Shout out to Game Changer Wrestling for doing big things, not just staying local, not just staying indie. WWE returns to Saudi Arabia June 7th. That show will feature The Undertaker, Brock Lesnar, and Bill Goldberg coming back. I did hear a tidbit that when SmackDown moves to Fox in the fall, of course they want the Brock Lesnar to be on SmackDown. But there was also talk of making Bill Goldberg a regular featured character on SmackDown, at least during the startup of SmackDown on Fox. So we'll have to keep an eye out for that. Icons of Wrestling, June 8th at the ECW Arena. This is a huge wrestling convention, fan convention. I'm looking forward to seeing the Lucha Brothers and the Great Muta. They're also going to have Bret Hart, Scott Hall, and many, many more. Later that night, the House of Hardcore will hold a show also at the ECW Arena. So that would be a great day for the wrestling fan. Icons of Wrestling convention during the day. House of Hardcore show later that night, June 8th at the ECW Arena. And now let's get to the main event of this episode. Let's talk about some Smoky Mountain Wrestling. I miss Smoky. They were only around for probably 3 years, maybe 4. But being a huge Jim Cornette fan, I immediately became a supporter of Smoky Mountain Wrestling. I would buy whatever videotapes. They would sell the videotapes of the big house shows. And then I immediately found people to tape trade with to get their weekly TV. And it was definitely a throwback at the time when all you had was WWF, WCW. WCW was really a cartoon at the time. WWF really wasn't much better. But this was really a throwback to the old territory days, and their motto was the wrestling the way you like it. I think if it was brought around at a different time, they probably would have lasted longer. But it was just a bad time for wrestling in general. You got to figure that time frame from 91 to 95 is right in the heart of the WWE steroid and sex scandal. The business was down overall. WCW was lucky to draw 500 people to house shows. Many people say that, that period, 94 to 95, was some of the worst stuff WWE ever put out. So the business was in a downturn. Smoky Mountain Wrestling, I think, just came at the wrong time. But regardless, I was a huge fan. And when I heard that they were going to be having what they called Fanweek, the summer of 1993, I knew I had to be there. It was going to be a week long in August. And not only would you get to see all the shows, you would travel the towns with the wrestlers. There will be exclusive Q&As with the wrestlers. We had, I believe it was like a cookout maybe. And they actually did Fan Week for 3 years, 93, 94, and 95. The first year, guys like Cornette, Kevin Sullivan were around, the Heavenly Bodies. Late, great Brian Hildebrand, the referee, was there. And, of course, Rock and Roll Express, Tim Horner, the Armstrongs. This week was actually the week of the first ever Jim Cornette shoot interview. It didn't start as a shoot interview. It was a Q&A with Cornette. People had video cameras, and it became a Cornette classic. I think the guy talked for probably 3 or 4 hours, answered every question we had. And what was cool, it was all smart fans. I mean, you don't have just regular fans going to a different state for an entire week to watch territory wrestling. These were smart fans. People came in from California. It was the two guys that did, I think it was Incredibly Strange Wrestling was the group that they did. The people came in from Philadelphia. The editor for Pro Wrestling Between the Sheets, Bob McGee, was there. The great Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer was there. Mike Rogers from Portland, a Portland wrestling historian, was there. Many cool people, many cool fans were there. And then the McGee's, Bob and Sarge McGee, actually got to see them on a monthly basis. Just a month later, going to ECW shows. We'll talk about that later. But it was some great fans there. Cornette did a 3 or 4 hour, like I said, shoot interview. This was, I believe, the week after he debuted on Monday Night Raw. So, of course, we talked about that. I'm sure the VHS tape is still out there floating somewhere. Sonny, Tammy Sytch, was just getting her start. She was still the young, wholesome-looking girl that, got her to where she became in the WWE. Candido was there. Continental, Southeastern mainstays, Dirty White Boy. Like I said, Tim Horner, Kevin Sullivan, the Armstrongs, Tracy Smothers. We had one night where we were in it was like a conference room where we would kind of meet. We did the Cornette shoot interview there. And then we did some, make-believe promos. Kevin Sullivan did a hilarious one. The Heavenly Bodies. Who else was there that was doing? The Rock and Roll Express did a hilarious heel promo. And again, I'm sure this is still probably out there floating on VHS tapes one day or somewhere. But it was a great memory 26 years ago. And now we're going to jump into that week. I got results of all the matches. I got memories of the matches. So I took the Greyhound down from Maryland to Morristown. And with stops and pickups and drop-offs, it was probably a 9-hour bus ride. I arrived in Morristown. I was picked up by Brian Hildebrand. Then we went immediately to a show that night. We took our stuff to the hotel. Then we went to a legit, when you think of red brick schoolhouse, this was where the first show was that week. It was at East High School in Morristown, Tennessee. This was August 13th, 1993. They called it Hot August Night in Motown, and it was hot. It was your Andy Mayberry red brick schoolhouse. They packed about 500 people into that gym, and it was a great show. It was, every match was hot. The fans were into every match. There was no bullshit. The first match saw Dirty White Boy beat Bobby Blaze. They were doing an angle at the time where Bobby Blaze couldn't last 10 minutes with Dirty White Boy, or he couldn't beat the Dirty White Boy, something like that. The Mongolian Stomper pinned Kevin Sullivan. This match went probably, the results here say 6 minutes. It wasn't that long of a match. He pinned Kevin Sullivan in a Mongolian death match, and what I remember most from this match is that the Stomper and Sullivan brawled all through the crowd, out the back door, brawled all outside the building, came back in through the front door, and then I think they went to the finish right after that. We then saw Tim Horner pin Chris Candido. This match went about 15 minutes, and a baby bottle match. And again, this was the South. People love shit like that. The loser had to suck on a baby bottle. And Chris Candido, being the great heel that he was, sold that baby bottle like he was being set on fire. They got that baby bottle so over in that match, and the fans just ate it up. Next match was Smoky Mountain Tag Team Champs Ron and Don Harris, the Bruise Brothers, defeated the Rock and Roll Express. This match went about 8 minutes, and a no DQ match when they got the pin on Robert Gibson. Again, Rock and Roll Express, classic tag team, one of the best ever. They had the fans eating out of the palm of their hands. We then saw Tracy Smothers defeat Smoky Mountain champion Brian Lee. This match went about 18 minutes. Tracy won via DQ. Tracy Smothers was the Wild Eye Southern boy, had the Rebel flag on his jacket, waving the Rebel flag, and these people, again, they ate it up. It was weird coming from the East Coast where, the Southern boys were over in Baltimore. They had some great matches in Baltimore. But cheesy shit like that normally didn't get over on the East Coast, or the Northeast rather. But Tracy Smothers had these people eating out of the palm of his hands. Next match was the main event. The legendary Armstrongs, Bob, Scott, and Steve Armstrong, defeated the Heavenly Bodies, who was Dr. Tom Pritchard, and Jimmy Del Rey, and Jim Cornette in a 6-man tag. This match went about 20 minutes. The Armstrongs won via DQ. Bob Armstrong, I don't know how old he was at this time, but you can Google it. Bob Armstrong, how old? This was in the summer of 1993. But you would have thought Bob was Hulk Hogan at the time. When he came out and did his dancing, again, the Southern fans had seen the Armstrongs, for the last 15, 20 years, at least Bob. Continental, Southeastern. Scott and Steve got their start in Continental. So these fans knew and loved the Armstrongs, and Bob just had the fans where he wanted them. And Bob had just returned from an injury angle. He was the commissioner. Cornette and the Bodies laid him out. He was gone for a few weeks. Bob cut promos all the way up leading to this week. This was a big week for Smoky Mountain Wrestling. Bob cut promos all up for TV towards this week, talking about Armstrong's Army, and he was going to come back and get revenge on Jim Cornette. He didn't quite get that revenge on this night. They got to win by DQ, but something tells me he'll get his revenge by the end of the week. Next night, August 14th, 1993, we saw Fire on the Mountain, 1993 at Freedom Hall. They drew 1,400 fans. Funny story, I actually saw the Mike Tyson, Michael Spinks fight on closed circuit 5 years prior in Freedom Hall. So Fire on the Mountain 93, August 14th, Freedom Hall opening match. Oh, this was the main event of this was a Rage in the Cage, which was like a War Games. So they had qualifying matches all throughout the night to see who would have the advantage for the Rage in the Cage. Would the bad guys get the advantage, or would the good guys get the advantage? So Jimmy Del Rey pinned Steve Armstrong in the opening match. That actually wound up giving Cornette's side the advantage in the Rage in the Cage match. Dirty White Boy went to a double disqualification with the Mongolian Stomper. Again, this match went about 5 minutes. Stomper was an old dude at the time, but he was in great shape. He couldn't really do much, so they kept it short and sweet. Had him do some brawls like he did the night before with Kevin Sullivan. But the Stomper is a Southeastern legend. Again, he was known all throughout that area years prior to Smoky Mountain Wrestling. The next match saw the Big Boss Man pin Kevin Sullivan. Chris Candido beat Tim Horner. This match went about 20 minutes. Candido won via DQ. And a loser sucks a baby bottle match. They did the baby bottle match again. Smoky Mountain champ Primetime Brian Lee defeated Tracy Smothers in 20 minutes in a coal miner's glove match. And the main event of the evening, the Rock and Roll Express, Bob, Steve, and Scott Armstrong defeated the Heavenly Bodies, who was Jimmy Del Rey and Tom Pritchard, along with the Bruise Brothers, and Jim Cornette in 21 minutes in the Rage in the Cage when Bob forced Jim Cornette to submit. Crowd went crazy at the end of this match. A hot show up and down the lineup. There wasn't a bad match. Even the 5-minute brawl with Dirty White Boy and Mongolian Stomper, still a very good match. The next day, we went to a TV taping in Clintwood, Virginia. This was August 16th, 1993. Clintwood Elementary School. It drew about 300 people. It opened with Bob, Scott, and Steve Armstrong defeating the Heavenly Bodies, Pritchard and Del Rey, along with Jim Cornette. That was a dark match. The first show they taped would be airing on August 28th. I'll just run through these real quick. Rock and Roll Express defeated Robbie Eagle and the Dark Secret. Smoky Mountain Beat the Champ, TV Champ, the Dirty White Boy, pinned Mike Sampson. For those not familiar with the Beat the Champ concept, they had a TV Champ where each week you could have the TV title for up to 5 weeks. I believe you won $1,000, or the TV gimmick was you won $1,000 each week that you won. And if you got through 5 weeks, you won a bonus of $5,000. And it was something cool they did for TV. I loved the TV title, whether it was in NWA or, in this case, Smoky Mountain Wrestling. It gave some guys something to do. You could do little angles on TV. And in this case, the TV champ at the time was a Dirty White Boy. Down and Dirty with Dutch Mantell, featured Ron Wright, the Dirty White Boy, and Tammy Sytch. This would lead to a great angle. Ron Wright, for those of you not familiar, another legend of the South. Down and Dirty with Dutch Mantell. If you haven't seen the Dark Side of the Ring features on Viceland recently, Dutch has been narrating those. And if you haven't seen those, YouTube at Dark Side of the Ring. They've done some great episodes. They have 3 more. Or are we down to 2 at this point? I know they got Gino Hernandez and Fabulous Moolah. They've already done Savage. They've done one on Savage and Elizabeth. They've done one on Bruiser Brody. They did one on the Von Erichs. And I know I'm forgetting something. But it's been a great series. Dark Side of the Ring on Viceland, narrated by the host of Down and Dirty with Dutch Mantell. Chris Candido defeated Jason West on this TV taping. And Steve Armstrong beat Kevin Sullivan via DQ. We then got to the next week of tapings, which would air September 4th, 1993. Robbie Eagle and Jason West beat Ron and Don Harris via DQ, and I'm sure that was just a mauling. The Harrises more than likely got DQ just for beating the crap out of them and not stopping. Tim Horner pinned Mike Sampson. Down and Dirty with Dutch. His guest that week would be Bob Armstrong. Smoky Mountain champ Brian Lee pinned Bobby Blaze. Jimmy Del Rey pinned Ricky Morton to win the vacant SMW Beat the Champ TV title. So that previous week was probably Dirty White Boy's final week. And then if you get through the 5th week, then they do what they do here. They just draw 2 new guys, and the winner becomes a TV champ. The next episode was taped for airing on September 11th. Stephen Scott Armstrong defeated Mike Sampson and the Dark Secret. Robbie Eagle defeated Chris Candido by DQ. Down and Dirty with Dutch, with his guest Ron Wright, the Dirty White Boy, Brian Lee, and Tammy Sytch. Smoky Mountain beat the champ, TV champ Jimmy Del Rey pinned Jason West. The Rock and Roll Express beat Ron and Don Harris via DQ. And Tim Horner pinned Chris Candido. The next show we went to was at the Jefferson County Fairgrounds. This was a wild experience. This was August 18th, 1993 in Jefferson City, Tennessee at the State Fair. They set up a ring in the middle of the fair, and they drew a couple hundred people. I think it may have been 200-300 people maybe. But it was fun. It was a fair show, meaning at a state fair. It was a casual fan. They kind of knew who some of the people were, especially the Rock and Roll Express and Jim Cornette. They had 4 matches on the show. Dirty White Boy went to a draw with Scott Armstrong. Tim Horner beat Brian Lee. The Rock and Roll Express beat the Heavenly Bodies via DQ in a loser must bungee match. And this is a wild memory. The ring was set up right across from the bungee jump attraction, where people would pay to bungee jump. Somehow they worked out a deal where Smoky Mountain would have this match, and the loser would have to bungee jump. And they did. Both Pritchard and Del Rey did the bungee jump, and they sold it like they were scared out of their mind. So for the 200 people there, they put on a great show. The main event of this show at the Jefferson County Fairgrounds was Robert Gibson winning a Battle Royal, which was basically just all the guys that were in the earlier matches involved in a Battle Royal. That was actually the night, August 18th, 1993, while we were at the fair. That was the night that the WCW presented Clash of the Champions from Daytona Beach, Florida. And for those that don't know right away, this is the night that the Shockmaster made his debut, his legendary debut. Of course, being the hardcore wrestling fans that we were, some of the guys brought down VCRs, and someone recorded the Clash of the Champions while we were at the fair. So when we came back from the fair, we all piled into that person's hotel room and watched the Clash of the Champions. Great memory. Dave Meltzer was in there. I believe earlier that week or later in the week, we watched an All Japan or Japanese women tape. I want to say it was one of the Dream Slams we watched. We had some all-night wrestling tape watching marathons that week. So that was August 18th, 1993. The next night, August 19th, 1993, Smoky Mountain was in Morgantown, West Virginia. Myself and a few other people did not go to that show. I'll tell you why in a minute. But here are the results. Dirty White Boy went to a draw with Scott Armstrong. Cowabunga, the Wrestling Turtle, defeated Jim Cornette. Cowabunga was actually Brian Hildebrand. Tim Horner beat Chris Candido in a baby bottle match. Rock and Roll Express defeated the Heavenly Bodies, and Cowabunga won a Battle Royal. Like I said, we did not go to that show, and the reason is because at the same time, WCW was running a show in Kingsport, Tennessee. So on August 19th, 1993, me, and I know it was the two guys from California, and I want to say one or two others, went to the Kingsport Armory. There were probably about 400 people there. But the reason we went there is because this was the first ever match between Ric Flair and Sid Vicious. When we got to the show, somehow we wound up in the back of the building, and we started checking doors, and what you know, one of the doors was unlocked. So we snuck into the building. We didn't pay to get in. That door took us downstairs somehow, and we crossed paths with Bill Dundee, who was in his full tuxedo gimmick. He was with, I believe he was with William Regal at the time. So we crossed paths with Bill Dundee. We saw Max Payne and Brad Armstrong. We struck up a conversation with Brad, saying who we were. We were, going through towns with Smoky Mountain that week, seeing his family. So he was, excited to hear that. And we just kind of went on our way. We went into the main part of the arena, found some seats, and sat there for the remainder of the show. So WCW Kingsport, Tennessee, August 19th, 1993. The opening match was Yoshi Kwan defeating Brad Armstrong. Mark Starr defeated Dick Slater. Weird about the two opening matches, Brad Armstrong and Dick Slater losing. These guys were well-known names down south. I don't see any reason why Brad Armstrong should have been losing to Yoshi Kwan or Dick Slater losing to Mark Starr, especially down south. They should have, I don't know many fans who would have known them, but for the few that were there, they would have been happy. WCW TV champion Ricky Steamboat went to a 20-minute draw with Lord Steven Regal. After the match, Steamboat cleared Regal from the ring. He stole his umbrella. He attacked Sir William, stole his umbrella, and put on his little penguin hat. So that was Bill Dundee. WCW NWA Tag Team Champions Arn Anderson and Paul Roma defeated Shanghai Pierce and Tex Slazenger. Johnny B. Bad defeated Max Payne. Sting pinned WCW World Champion Big Van Vader in a non-title match. This match went about 10 minutes after Vader missed a sit-down splash attempt moments after accidentally knocking Harley Race off the ring apron. The main event, NWA World Champion Ric Flair defeated Sid Vicious via disqualification when Colonel Rob Parker, another Southeastern legend, Flair won by disqualification when Colonel Rob Parker, who was already in the ring, stomped on Flair as Flair had Sid covered up with a roll-up. After the match, Flair was double-teamed by Sid and Rob Fuller. That double team continued until Arn Anderson and Paul Roma, who were horsemen at the time, ran out to clear the ring. So that was a pretty good memory, seeing Flair and Sid for the first time, sneaking into the building, seeing the show for free. The next night was the K-Town Showdown, August 20th, 1993, in Knoxville, Tennessee, at the Civic Coliseum, drawing about 2,700 people. And this was the huge match, the huge show of the week. This was what they built towards. Bobby Blaze defeated the Dirty White Boy in 10 minutes when White Boy failed to beat Blaze within the time limit. So, like I mentioned earlier, Dirty White Boy had a challenge that he could defeat, or Bobby Blaze could not last 10 minutes with him. In this case, Bobby Blaze lasted 10 minutes, and that was considered a victory. Tim Horner defeated Chris Candido via DQ in a loser must wear a diaper match. Again, great heel, Chris Candido. He sold this diaper like it was nobody's business. Great chicken shit heel. And actually last week we had something on our RassleRama Facebook page. Last week was the anniversary of his death. Great talent, gone too soon. Smoky Mountain champ Brian Lee pinned the Mongolian Stomper. Big Boss Man pinned Kevin Sullivan in a Singapore spike match. From what I can remember, I think this was actually supposed to be a wrestler from Japan from the Wing Group, Yukihiro Kanemura, challenging Sullivan. I may have my dates mixed up, but earlier that summer on TV, they had Kanemura and Kevin Sullivan in a wild brawl, and Sullivan just carved this guy up with a spike. Wing at the time was a hardcore deathmatch promotion, and the Japanese talent just loved being on TV, and somebody doing hardcore matches would have loved being on American TV, getting carved up by Kevin Sullivan. So the guy came in, Yukihiro Kanemura. His arm was just butchered by Kevin Sullivan. I'm sure you can find it on YouTube. Kevin Sullivan, Smoky Mountain, Spike, Kevin Sullivan, Yukihiro Kanemura, Spike match, Smoky Mountain, something like that. It'll come up. But it's odd to see Boss Man and Kevin Sullivan in a Singapore Spike match. I think it may have supposed to have been Kanemura. I may be wrong. May have my dates mixed up. The Bruise Brothers defeated the Rock and Roll Express, Steve and Scott Armstrong, and the Heavenly Bodies in a 4 corners tag team match. This was an elimination match. Del Rey pinned Robert Gibson to eliminate the Rock and Rolls. Steve Armstrong pinned Jimmy Del Rey to eliminate the Bodies. And then Steve Armstrong was pinned to give the win to the Bruise Brothers. The main event of the evening and of the week, Bob Armstrong pinned Jim Cornette in a Lumberjacks with tennis racket match. The Big Boss Man was the special referee. I remember before the match, Cornette was doing some stuff with Boss Man. You know, the Big Bubba Rogers. Hey, we're friends from the times in the past. Boss Man wasn't going for it. I remember after this match, Cornette was wheeled off in a gurney, a stretcher. Had the neck brace. He sold it like a champ. And actually got a great picture of him being wheeled away on the stretcher. And, you know, this was back before cell phones and instant pictures. We were shooting pictures on cameras, and we had to take the film to get developed and wait a few days for the film to be developed to see how the pictures turned out. But that was a great picture. I wish I still had it. But that ended the week of Smoky Mountain Fan Week. Armstrong getting his revenge on Jim Cornette. It was a great week. Great shows throughout the week. We sprinkled in a WCW show in there. We also saw the Clash of the Champions with the debut of the Shockmaster. And the last show was August 20th. I want to say 3 or 4 weeks later, I was at the ECW Arena in Philly. Which would have been Paulie Dangerously's first show in charge of ECW. So that was a pretty cool, I guess, summer for wrestling for me. Seeing a week's worth of Smoky Mountain, then the next month seeing really the start of Paulie's ECW, even though ECW was around for a while before that. We may talk about that. We saw ECW. The show was called Ultra Clash in September, and then it was 2 shows in October, Blood Feast. So we may do a show on that down the line. That will bring us to the end of this episode, talking about Smoky Mountain Fanweek 1993. If you were a fan of Smoky, I'd love to hear some of your thoughts. If you're not familiar with Smoky, check it out on YouTube. I know the WWE Network has a few episodes, but it's really stuff with Jericho and Lance Storm. They don't have everything up there. I don't know why they have everything. But you can see a lot on YouTube. Shoot your comments to us, RassleRama@gmail.com. Again, check us out online, www.RassleRama.com. And check us out on Facebook, facebook.com/RassleRama. That's going to do it for this episode, guys. Thanks for tuning in. And until next time, take care and see ya.
Has all that is here to this great city of Baltimore.
Ladies and gentlemen, from Baltimore, Maryland, let's get ready to rumble!
Oh, we are!
If there's anybody that's a big star in Baltimore, it's you. In Baltimore, whether you like it or not, you better learn to listen, because I'm the best there is.
Just tonight, as Championship Wrestling returns to Baltimore at the Baltimore Civic Center tonight.
And I have picked Baltimore out to be the place where this war is going to come to an end, because they got a lot of nice, fine hospitals there.
You know it, I know it, and Baltimore is.
It's the Night of Champions in Baltimore, Maryland at the Civic Center.